In the photo, Medusa and Susanoo, who had been killed in battle, lay next to the broken sword left behind by Amaterasu. It was obvious that all three had been killed by Zhang Yi. It was a complete victory, with no doubt whatsoever. The East Sea region was as if it had been frozen by magic, completely silent, everyone frozen in place, unable to speak. Their brains and common sense couldn't comprehend such an existence. This was clearly something only Epsilon could do. Zhang Yi, the chaos of the Jiangnan region. Didn't he only have a supernatural ability index of 9,800 and the code name Absolute Defense? How could a mutant like him kill three powerful mutants at once? No one could understand. Li Tianyang was silent for several minutes. This time, the look in his eyes was completely blank. Even he didn't know how to explain this phenomenon. Black Tortoise glanced at the photo, lowered his head, and continued playing the game. The Jiangnan region is finally going to have its own Epsilon? He didn't care about that. If anything, it would be better if Zhang Yi could finally obtain the source of God and become Epsilon. Because then, he would be the only Epsilon in the East Sea region. Li Tianyang remained silent for a full 5 minutes. 5 minutes was not enough time for him to digest this reality. After Zhang Yi arrived on the island, his achievements were simply jaw-dropping. The points he earned by himself exceeded the total of everyone else. Even the four spirits, the pride of the East Sea region, were completely overshadowed by Zhang Yi. He slowly lowered his head, his heart filled with mixed emotions. If this continued, wouldn't the source of God fall into Zhang Yi's hands? Although this wasn't that difficult to accept, it was still better than falling into the hands of the Colombian Navy. However, Li Tianyang couldn't accept this fact. From the very beginning, he and Zhang Yi had a personal grudge against each other. The more outstanding Zhang Yi became, the more despicable his actions seemed. Zhang Yi's brilliance was the shadow cast on him, a slap in his face. A thought even flashed through his mind. Even if he left the source of God to the joint forces, he couldn't let Zhang Yi get it. Otherwise, given the grudge between the two of them, if Zhang Yi became Epsilon, he would definitely come looking for him to settle the score. As soon as this thought arose, Li Tianyang was startled. As a soldier, how could he have such narrow-minded thoughts? But malice was like a flood, and once released, it was difficult to take back. Jealousy, he was starting to feel jealous of Zhang Yi. He absolutely could not allow this man to continue to become stronger and more brilliant. Li Tianyang turned back to Situ Jin. Minister Situ, I am the commander-in-chief of this operation, right? Situ Jin nodded with a smile. You are the commander-in-chief of the battlefield. You are the commander-in-chief of the battlefield, but there are 2 higher-ranking officers above you. Li Tianyang asked in a deep voice, then why did Chaos report to you first instead of me? What does he mean by that? Li Tianyang's actions caused everyone at the scene to look over. Even the officers from the East Sea region were embarrassed and turned their heads away. Li Tianyang's suppression was too obvious. Zhang Yi had made tremendous contributions, but at this moment, because of personal grudges, he was not praising him, but instead questioning him. This was a little hard to watch. Situ Jin was no pushover either. Zhang Yi's brilliant achievements were his greatest source of confidence. Ahem, Minister Li, this isn't right, is it? Chaos has made such great achievements, we should be commending him. With you picking on him like this, no wonder he doesn't want to report to you. Situ Jin's words were sharp, and he wasn't being polite to Li Tianyang at all. They were only working together temporarily. Although the Jiangnan region wasn't as strong as the East Sea region, it wasn't weak either. Li Tianyang's eyes darkened. In any case, acting on your own on the battlefield is a big gross violation. Have Chaos contact me immediately. Doesn't he like hunting mutants? Good, then have him kill the deputy captain of Hell's Lock, Billy the Kid. That way, we can ensure that we get the source of God. Li Tianyang's purpose was obvious. Billy the Kid's strength was unmatched by other mutants. He was a mutant who was only one step away from entering the Epsilon. Li Tianyang wanted to send Zhang Yi to kill him, and regardless of the outcome, the East Sea region would ultimately benefit. When two tigers fight, one will be injured, or perhaps both will be injured. At that time, the four spirits of the East Sea region would reap the benefits, and the source of God would become theirs. Sidujin folded his arms behind his back and said indifferently, "You are wrong. Our Jiangnan region has achieved glorious victories on the battlefield. On the other hand, your East Sea region, sigh." His sigh made the East Sea region officers look at each other, ashamed beyond words. When they arrived, they looked down on the Jiangnan region, thinking that they were the absolute main force on the battlefield. They said that the Jiangnan region only needed to provide support for them. But now, where were their achievements? Only Azure Dragon had killed a single Kim Hee-chul, which was a pretty good result. The others hadn't even managed to kill a captain-level enemy. Actually, they couldn't be blamed for that. In an area shrouded in thick fog, everyone was cautious and didn't dare to act rashly. Zhang Yi was an exception. With his space ability, he could move between areas at top speed. Moreover, he had prepared in advance and brought Flower and Lele with him to help search for enemies. From this perspective, he was the most prepared of everyone. It couldn't be said that he was necessarily much stronger than the four spirits and Billy the Kid. It was just that he made the most of his abilities. Sidujin smiled and said to Li, "The mighty East Sea region should show us what you've got. How about it, regarding Billy the Kid, you guys should go and kill him?" Li Tianyang was a little red with embarrassment. He was speechless. What they said was true. Zhang Yi alone had already killed 3 members of Hell's Lock. Their East Sea region, on the other hand, had no obvious results. In the end, Li Tianyang could only snort coldly. It was unreasonable, and his words were 3 degrees weaker. Not to mention that now, not only did they lack in simple logic, they also didn't have enough battle results to support his arrogance. Li Tianyang looked coldly at the 3D map. He thought to himself, let them be arrogant for a while. That chaos guy only knows how to hunt mutants all day long. This is a good thing, at least it clears up a lot of trouble for our people. Azure Dragon and the others can travel to Mist Valley more smoothly. As long as we obtain the source of God, everything you have done before will pale in comparison. At the command center of the Huashu Kingdom, there were some minor frictions, but overall, except for Li Tianyang, everyone else was delighted. The more high-level mutants Zhang Yi killed, the greater their chances of winning the battle. However, it was still too early to rejoice. Their ultimate goal in coming to the island was not to kill anyone. It was to obtain the source of God. One source of God could at least create a level epsilon mutant. To put it bluntly, a level epsilon mutant was worth more than the entire population of the island. If the joint forces got their hands on it first, the forces in Huashu Kingdom would still be the ultimate losers. Columbia Navy Temporary Command Center. Dreadful silence. The atmosphere in the entire command center office was eerily quiet. The officers watched as Christina died. They stood straight, quietly glancing at General Horn in front of them out of the corners of their eyes, not daring to breathe. Just from his back, they could feel that the general's anger had reached its peak. Another member of Hell's Lock had fallen. This time, unless they obtained the source of God, they would suffer the greatest loss since the end of the world. When he returned to the naval base, he would surely be stripped of his rank and never have the chance to be promoted in the Navy again. Although so far, he was not at fault for the battle. But when something went wrong, someone had to take responsibility. As the commander-in-chief on the battlefield, he could not escape blame. General Horn clenched his fists and slammed them hard on the command table. His eyes were bloodshot, and he gritted his teeth so hard that his gums bled. We can't go on like this. This guy is more trouble than we thought. We no longer have any advantage on the battlefield. He turned his head away and glared at his deputy, Lieutenant Colonel McGrady. Deploy the Soul Reaper, he said coldly. At the same time, everyone else in the room felt a chill run through them. McGrady swallowed hard and asked with difficulty, do we really have to go this far? Even Cardalus, who had been watching the scene with his arms crossed, looked a little odd when he heard the name Soul Reaper. He sighed, as if remembering something. General Horn roared, "We have no way out now. 3 members of Hell's Lock have been killed, causing a serious imbalance in our combat strength. Even if we send other mutants to the island, it will only be feeding that bastard called Chaos. We cannot afford to lose this battle. We must win at any cost." General Horn waved his hand. "I am now the highest-ranking officer here. Follow my orders. Hurry up and release the Soul Reaper." The officers looked at each other. Although they didn't want to see that monster reappear, they had no other choice at this point. At the control panel, several operators opened the control diagram of the flagship. The entire structure of the vessel could be seen on the screen. The screen zoomed in until it reached the deepest part of the vessel. There, beneath layers of iron plating, was an iron box that resembled a coffin. The operators' hands were trembling as they looked at General Horn. "General, please enter the command." An operation panel appeared in front of General Horn. He hesitated for a second, then quickly entered the release command. A moment later, at the bottom of the flagship, there was a sealed room. This room was filled with a transparent liquid, which was the most dangerous organic solution. If an ordinary person came into contact with even a drop of it, they would quickly turn into an ice sculpture. This solution filled thousands of cubic meters of space. Gurgle, gurgle. The sound of flowing water could be heard, and a hexagonal mark appeared on the floor at the bottom of the room. Then, a section of the floor began to slowly rise. As the floor rose higher and higher, it revealed what was underneath it, a coffin made of an unknown black metal. It was completely black, non-reflective, as if even light would be swallowed by it. Thick metal chains dragged it up, slowly floating it to the surface of the solution. The doors of the room opened. Dozens of heavily armed Columbia mutant soldiers pointed their guns at it as if facing a formidable enemy. Even though they knew that the coffin in front of them was strong enough to seal away an extremely powerful mutant, the monster inside the coffin had once cast an enormous shadow over them. Anyone who thought of his name would shiver with fear. On ordinary days, even a few people in the Columbus Ocean Fleet dared not mention his name. Everyone referred to him as you-know-who. He was the nightmare of the entire Columbia Fleet. Escorted by soldiers, the huge black coffin was placed on a launch pad. A mutant who looked like an officer came to the control panel and sent a signal to the command center that everything was ready. The command center immediately began operations and transmitted all of Zhang Yi's personal information. "Soul Reaper, your mission is to kill him." The order was simple and straightforward. The order was too complicated for him to understand. Inside the black coffin, a pale and ugly head suddenly opened its eyes. It was a face that did not look like a living person. The head was so big that it looked like a human head boiling in a pot. His pupils were as big as grains of rice, and the electrodes inserted into his head directly transmitted the information about his target, Chaos, to his brain. Then, the other side pressed the launch button. The launch doors of the flagship vessel opened. The black coffin was launched like a missile, shooting directly toward Star Island. It was a very ridiculous act. They didn't even dare to let the people get out and send them to the island. Soul Reaper was a double-edged sword for the Columbia Navy. Strictly speaking, he was a failed experiment in the super soldier program. Of the 1,000 soldiers with supernatural potential who were originally selected, only Cardalus was successful in the end. Almost all of the rest were killed. However, Soul Reaper was an exception. He survived but lost almost all of his sanity, leaving only his instinct to kill. Most of the time, he was a killing machine, only occasionally regaining his senses. Therefore, when he appeared, he often killed members of the Columbia Navy before killing his enemies. In a joking way, he killed many more Columbia soldiers than enemies. However, the Columbia Navy did not choose to destroy him, but kept him around. This was because such a pure and dangerous killing machine would come in handy sooner or later. For example, right now. The black coffin was launched from Horn's flagship, flew through the air in a curved arc, and then slammed into the mud of Star Island. The commotion here did not escape the eyes of the Huashu Kingdom's allied forces. However, as long as the other side did not deploy Cardalis, then on the surface, they had not violated the rules of the game. On the flagship, Horn informed everyone on the island as soon as he dispatched the Soul Reaper. He told them to be careful and avoid encountering the Soul Reaper at all costs. Because once they encountered that guy, he would kill everyone, friend or foe. The only good news was that the command center had ordered him to kill Chaos. Therefore, he would make Chaos his first target. The huge coffin was almost completely buried in the ground, with only a short section exposed. However, the commotion here attracted the attention of nearby mutants. A few kilometers away, on top of a tall building, the space suddenly twisted. A man in his 30s, dressed in East Sea Region Navy combat uniform, appeared there. He looked at the rolling poisonous mist in the distance and immediately reported to the command center. Suspicious object launched by the enemy detected, landing point located in the northern part of Karatajang City. Tian glanced at the map and confirmed the location, which was still a long way from Mist Valley. He frowned. What did those guys in Colombia launch? An aide said, first of all, we can rule out mutants. With this type of launch, even an enhanced mutant would have difficulty withstanding it. It's most likely a weapon. The distance between General Horn's flagship and the landing point of the mysterious object was more than 10 kilometers. A person was put in an iron box, fired like a bullet, and then fell from a high altitude. Even a pure enhancement-type mutant like Bai Li Changqing would have lost most of his life if he didn't die. Therefore, based on common sense, it couldn't be a mutant. Li Tianyang strongly agreed with the staff officer's opinion. Since it's something the enemy needs, we mustn't let them get it. The current battlefield situation is favorable to us. As long as we prevent their reinforcements from arriving, the source of God will be ours. When he said this, he deliberately glanced at Sidu Jin and the other officers from the Jiangnan region. He was afraid that later on, the Jiangnan region, or more precisely, Chaos, would become their biggest competitor. Sidu Jin smiled and said nothing. Li Tianyang said to Bai Zhe, who appeared nearby, keep an eye on it and destroy that thing while ensuring your safety. Bai Zhe, got it. He looked at the toxic mist billowing in front of him and was unable to confirm the object that had landed with his eyes or binoculars. So Bai Zhe tidied up his equipment, hugged a specially made black rifle, and cautiously walked in that direction. However, as he walked along, he did not see anyone else nearby. As expected, the Columbia mutants did not appear. But in order to obey his orders, he kept cautiously walking towards the landing site of the mysterious object. When he got within 10 meters, he could finally see what it was. It was a metal box, a pitch-black metal box. Bai Zhe dared not let his guard down for a moment. He immediately raised his gun and aimed at the box. Could it be some kind of deadly weapon? But why would it be thrown here? It's unlikely to be a weapon of mass destruction. There are still people from their group on the island. What on earth is this? Bai Zhe was very puzzled. He carefully observed his surroundings, then took a small metal box from his tactical backpack behind him. The metal box was placed on the ground and quickly cracked open, transforming into a small spider-like robot that crawled toward the black metal box. The spider robot quickly climbed onto the metal box and shot 2 red lines from its sensor, beginning to scan the metal box. But just then, the metal box suddenly shook violently. Hiss! A crack appeared in the box, and thick white smoke billowed out from inside. Without hesitation, Bai Zhe quickly used his supernatural ability. Black Domain. An extremely dark light flashed in his pupils. In just a short moment, a huge black area appeared with him at the center. Nothing could be seen, and no light could penetrate this area. Only Bai Zhe himself could see everything that was happening in this area. The crack in the black metal box grew larger and made a screeching sound, as if something was slowly prying it open. Bai Zhe quickly raised his gun and fired. The black special rifle also used origin bullets, which could cause greater damage to mutants. Bang! A loud bang rang out, and the black metal box burst open, heavy metal plates flying everywhere from the ground. A naked, monster-like creature emerged from underground. Its body was a sickening white color, like a zombie that had been soaked in water for years, with twisted muscles bulging out, giving the impression that it would explode at any moment. Its head, in particular, looked like a large basketball. Such creatures were not uncommon, but they usually only appeared on the bodies of the dead and were called giants. However, instead of being filled with microorganisms and gas, the soul of the dead was filled with excessive amounts of drugs. Or rather, he was a kind of being between the dead and the living. The origin bullets fired by Baizé hit him with a loud crack, but they didn't even scratch his skin. The soul of the dead had just been released, and his eyes were filled with confusion. However, when he felt the bullets on his body and saw the living person in front of him, his confused eyes suddenly filled with a bloodthirsty killing intent. Baizé felt a chill run down his spine. That monster couldn't possibly see him in the black domain. But the lost soul's eyes were definitely staring at him. It was a terrifying psychic ability. Moreover, the aura of oppression emanating from Soul Reaper made Baizé feel as if he had seen the devil himself. "No!" Baizé shouted. Due to the existence of the Black Realm, the command center had no idea what was happening. Li Tianyang hurriedly asked, Baizé, Baizé. What's going on? There's a monster, a monster. The sound abruptly stopped and quickly turned into static. The soul-devouring entity's figure instantly appeared in front of Baizé. In an instant, his massive right hand crushed the assault rifle in Baizé's hands, along with his arm that was trying to block it, and gripped his throat. Puff! Soul Reaper squeezed hard, and Baizé's neck was broken as if it had been crushed by iron pliers, and he was sent flying. Soul Reaper crushed the East Sea region's captain, Shirahagi, as if he were a bug. Without pausing, he threw the body aside and scanned the surroundings with an icy gaze. His brain was filled with orders from above to kill a guy named Chaos. Soul Reaper did not sense Chaos's presence, and a hint of confusion appeared in his eyes. He walked bare in the freezing snow at -60°C, searching for his prey. By the time the command center of the Huashu Kingdom confirmed Baizé's death, he had already disappeared into the vast poisonous mist. From beginning to end, no one knew how Baizé had died. Li Tianyang's mood became increasingly depressed. Seeing the Jiangnan region win battle after battle, while they suffered defeat after defeat, he felt like he had lost all his dignity in the entire command center. But now, apart from his incompetence and rage, he had no other options. He didn't even know what was hidden inside that metal coffin. The command center could only notify everyone to be extra careful. As time passed, the various mutant teams gradually approached the Mist Valley area. Most of the teams obtained origin elves during their exploration. Those who survived gained a huge harvest. After this experience, the upper echelons of the two regions finally realized why the Xinjiang region had been able to gain power unmatched in the entire Huashu Kingdom before them. In addition to possessing the most powerful weapons and military system, they had also discovered the Source of God in the Qinling Mountains. It turned out that the value of the Source of God lay not only in its ability to help people break through the Delta-level bottleneck. The byproducts of the Source of God alone could create a large number of powerful people. Therefore, most of the teams began to focus their main goal on hunting origin elves. Only Billy the Kid, the Four Spirits, and others still had their eyes on the Source of God. However, teams such as the Jiangnan region and the mutants from other countries in the joint forces also understood that the Source of God had nothing to do with them. On the contrary, if they found the origin elves, they would have a chance to capture them. In the city of Makibo, located in the northeast of Mist Valley, the demon squad from the Jiangnan region was here. Led by Captain Lu Huang, they slowly approached Mist Valley. According to their experience, the closer they were to the core area of the Source of God, the higher the probability of origin elves appearing. At this point, their goal had become hunting origin elves. The entire demon squad had a total of 12 members. This was also one of the few teams still operating as a group at this time. As for the reason, one could refer to the Sky Dragon Pirates. In battles between high-ranking mutants, if the level difference was too great, numerical superiority was not a real advantage. On the contrary, it could become a burden. However, the demon squad had always been very lucky. Since arriving on the island, they had not encountered any other mutant organizations or joint forces. The most likely reason was that Zhang Yi had killed too many mutants from the joint forces, attracting most of their attention. However, when they approached Mist Valley, they could no longer maintain their good luck. Lu Huang walked through the poisonous mist, followed by his tall and curvaceous deputy captain, Liu. The remaining 10 members were scattered around, searching for information. One team member stood on the branch of a large tree, looking at the energy detection device in his hand, which was emitting a faint reaction. "Captain, there's an energy reaction in the southwest direction." After receiving the information, Lu Huang nodded indifferently. "Just as we thought, the number of these creatures will increase as we get closer to the source of God." Liu smiled and leaned close to his ear and said, "Captain, but the further we go, the greater the possibility of encountering danger." "Ah, I know." Lu Huang's tone was as cold as ever. Although he was young, he was not stupid. It was just that he had finally encountered such an opportunity to rapidly improve his strength. How could he miss it? Along the way, they had found a pair of origin elves. The entire demon squad's strength had been upgraded. As for him, his ability index had now reached around 9,500 points. Of course, the ability index was a concept that needed to be evaluated by a professional organization. Only high-level mutants could judge for themselves based on their experience. If I can go one step further and even find the large origin elves they mentioned, will I be closer to Epsilon? A look of anticipation appeared in Lu Huang's eyes. In the end of the world, strength was everything. If one day, I obtain unparalleled power, even my ugly appearance will be recognized by everyone, he said to himself. The team members who detected the energy fluctuations continued to ask, "Should we continue forward?" Lu Huang hurriedly said, "Don't rush. Everyone, follow the original plan and advance toward the energy source in a scattered formation. Be careful, the road ahead will become increasingly dangerous." The communication channel transmitted the team members' unanimous reply, "Yes, Captain." Amidst the thick poisonous mist, streaks of light scattered like shooting stars and rushed toward the source of energy. Lu Huang looked back at his deputy captain, Liu. "Liu, stay close behind me." His eyes and expression were as cold as ice, as if he had no interest in the world. He was quite handsome, quite like a mask. However, when he spoke to Liu, he tried hard to make his voice sound warm. "I can already sense danger." He took a deep breath. "When I can no longer control my killing intent, you must stop me in time. I'm afraid of myself when I'm possessed by evil." A sweet smile appeared on Liu's face. She and Lu Huang looked like two extremes that were completely incompatible. She reached out and gathered her long hair. Due to the 20 centimeters difference in height, when she spoke to Lu Huang, he happened to be looking directly at her ample bosom. "Yes, Captain." Lu Huang looked at her for a few seconds, then silently turned his head away. "Let's go." Deep within the thick fog, a huge pit had sunk into the ground. Judging from the surrounding buildings, it might have once been a massive underground parking lot. At the bottom of the pit stood a silver-gray metal cage. A small, fiery red fairy was bound inside the cage, looking up at the sky in confusion. In the shadows, a huge monster was staring intently at the scene from afar. It had dozens of eyes on its head, and green liquid flowed from its mouth, corroding and penetrating the stone slates on the ground. A breeze blew. It was the wind stirred up by the rapid movement of its prey. In the middle of the surrounding buildings, strands of thin, long white threads, barely visible, were also stirred. The members of the demon squad quickly approached the area based on the energy reactions they detected. The thick poisonous mist was one of the greatest dangers here. It wasn't entirely because its toxins were deadly, but more because it could render most reconnaissance equipment ineffective. Therefore, it was impossible to judge the situation here from a distance. However, among the members of the demon squad, there were of course those who were skilled at reconnaissance. A mutant fell from the sky, his body floating lightly like a kite. He landed on all fours, and his body suddenly swelled up, his stomach expanding several times in size and his throat becoming flat and thick. Croak! He aimed at the area in front of him and let out a frog croak. The sound rippled out in a fan shape, and everything it touched was fed back to his brain. Although he couldn't see it directly with his eyes, he could judge the basic situation ahead through the echoes. The sound waves quickly swept across the area ahead. He discovered the huge open pit and the origin elves inside, which were emitting radiant energy. The frogman was overjoyed and immediately reported his findings to Lu Huang. Target found, confirmed to be origin elves. However, only one has been found. Lu Huang frowned. Only one? Those things usually traveled in groups, and it was very rare to find only one. Lu Huang thought for 2 seconds and immediately ordered, "Be careful, it could be a trap." The frogman smiled and said, "Don't worry, Captain. There are no signs of enemies in the vicinity, we are safe." As he finished speaking, a wisp of white thread, imperceptible to the naked eye, drifted silently through the thick poisonous mist. In the next moment, the ground beneath the frogman's feet cracked open with a loud bang. White threads like steel cables shot up into the sky, binding him tightly. The frogman looked down in terror and saw a deep pit in the ground beneath him. At the bottom of the pit was a huge striped spider. All the white threads were its web. The dense web had already covered every inch of the pit, covering an area of hundreds of meters. This was a huge trap. The frogman's face changed, and he tried desperately to break free, but his whole body was tightly bound, and he couldn't break free from the spider web, which was tougher than steel. Enemy attack. Not far away, the members of the demon squad saw this scene and reported the enemy attack to Lu Huang while rushing over to rescue him. However, the moment they appeared, from the depths of the thick fog, like tearing open a canvas, a group of figures dressed in gray-brown combat uniforms emerged from the dilapidated forest. Their combat uniforms were distinctive, completely covering their bodies, with only a pair of eyes visible behind tactical goggles. They all carried 2 samurai swords on their backs and were dressed like ninjas. They used camouflage to blend in with their surroundings. Some of the ninjas were skilled in the art of stealth and managed to evade the frogman's surveillance. The battle was about to begin. Since both sides recognized each other as mortal enemies, there were no words exchanged. It was a fight to the death. Not every mutant who came to the island had their sights set on the source of God. The mutants who weren't as strong thought about how to maximize their own gains. For example, this group of neon mutants had set a trap, waiting for the mutants from the Huashu Kingdom to take the bait. As long as they could get the bounty on the Huashu Kingdom's mutant troops, it would be an extremely generous reward. Lu Huang was the first to realize that they had fallen into the enemy's trap. At this moment, the 2 dead trees around them suddenly twisted strangely. It was as if the trees had shed a layer of bark, and 2 ninjas wielding swords jumped down. Lu Huang's eyes were cold and terrifying. He opened his right hand, and a fierce cut quickly appeared on his palm. Then, a long white bone burst out from inside, which was clearly a large sword made from a polished bone. Facing the attack of the 2, Lu Huang's body burst with black energy, and he flashed past the 2 ninjas. Puff! Puff! Blood gushed out like a waterfall, and the 2 ninjas were slashed in half, swords and all, right through the chest. A large amount of blood mixed with broken internal organs fell to the ground with a clatter, looking just like the guts of a pig slaughtered during the Chinese New Year. They're ninjas from the Neon IGA-style ninja clan. Lu Huang's eyes turned red, and he said coldly. "Deputy Captain Liu hurried over. Captain, how did you figure that out?" Lu Huang said, "Ninjas are dedicated to the use of samurai swords." Liu placed her fingers in front of her lips and blinked her cute big eyes. With her playful movements, the magnificent figure in front of her swayed involuntarily. "So that's how it is." The battle was about to begin, without a word of nonsense. Just as Lu Huang killed the 2 ninjas, the leader of this group appeared. It was a tall mutant wearing a white combat suit. He was 2 heads taller than the other ninjas, nearly 2 meters tall. When he emerged from underground and suddenly attacked, the 2 members of the demon squad didn't even notice. Only 2 flashes of white light, and their heads flew high into the air. This was how ninjas operated. They only cared about the result, not the method. Even Tanaka Ryusei, the leader of the ninja clan, which was independent from the 2 major factions in Neon, still liked to use sneak attacks to achieve victory. The moment he appeared, Lu Huang sensed his presence. Strong people always attract each other, especially those whose power surpasses the entire battlefield, making people unconsciously make room for them. At this level, lower-ranked mutants could hardly play a significant role in their battle. A fierce smile suddenly appeared on Lu Huang's cold face, and he was so excited that the corners of his eyes were about to crack. That was how a demon behaved when it encountered the perfect prey. I've been holding back for so long, and finally I've found a worthy opponent. This is interesting, really interesting. Liu looked at Lu Huang's murderous gaze and hurried over, gently hugging him and smiling like a loving mother as she comforted him. "Captain, calm down." Her body emitted a soft white light that enveloped Lu Huang and slowly calmed the bloodshot in his eyes. However, she found it difficult to calm the intense fighting spirit in Lu Huang's eyes. After arriving on the island, he had been longing to achieve something and kill enemies. Especially after receiving Zhang Yi's battle reports one after another, he was even more eager to fight. It was only because of his deputy captain Liu's reminder that he didn't actively go looking for enemies. But now, the enemies had come to him. Why be polite? Tanaka Ryusei held 2 swords in his hands and walked step by step towards Lu Huang and Liu. Under his mask, his eyes were cold and terrifying. He didn't move very fast because he was sizing up Lu Huang and Liu. Jiangnan Region, Demon Squad, Captain Gluttony. There's no information on the woman next to him, so she shouldn't be at the captain level. At this moment, Lu Huang also received a notification from the command center. The guy in front of you is the leader of the Neon Ninja organization, Yatsuki, Tanaka Ryusei. Both of them obtained some information about each other from their respective command centers at the same time. Both sides were extremely cautious, and neither of them launched an attack without permission. Only after confirming each other's code names, ability indexes, and abilities did they make basic decisions. Tanaka Ryusei, ability index 9,500 points. Lu Huang, ability index 9,400 points. The 2 were considered evenly matched. However, Lu Huang had an extra deputy, Liu. Tanaka Ryusei's gaze lingered on Liu for less than a second. In a battle between captains, the presence of a deputy captain may not necessarily have a positive effect. Generally speaking, there are only 2 situations where it is meaningful. One is when the deputy captain's abilities complement those of the captain. The other is when the deputy captain is a support-type mutant who can strengthen the captain. Liu clearly belonged to the latter category. Lu Huang reached out and protected her behind him. Liu's gentle gaze also became sharp. She slowly raised her hands, and 2 white beams of light connected to Lu Huang like ribbons, as gentle as a mother's embrace. This was her protective ability, love and sincerity. Tanaka Ryusei raised the twin swords in his hands. Lu Huang also raised his great demon sword, pointing it directly at Tanaka Ryusei. Both of them were skilled in close combat, and without any nonsense, they rushed towards each other in an instant. Among mutants, the most tragic battles always occur between those skilled in close combat. This is because they only fight with swords and blood, risking their lives. If one side shows any weakness, it will be seized upon by the other in an instant, deciding the outcome of the battle. In other words, close combat between mutants usually resulted in at least one death, or even both sides dying together. With a large sword against 2 swords, the strength and speed of both men were pushed to the limit. Every collision between the swords stirred up endless storms, blowing the poisonous miasma several kilometers away. Sparks flew everywhere, and the sound of clanging metal filled the air. Liu stood in the distance, providing protection for Lu Huang. Tanaka Ryusei's sword skills were superb, but Lu Huang's sword skills were equally sharp and ruthless. The 2 touched in midair, and less than a second later, they landed and charged at each other again. Every time they clashed, their swords collided hundreds of times. Tanaka Ryusei's gaze fell on Liu. You have a support-type mutant providing protection? Then I'll kill your support first. He took out 2 red metal balls from his body and threw them at Lu Huang. Lu Huang frowned, but did not use his sword to catch them, nor did he dodge. Because Liu was right behind him, he couldn't dodge. So, he opened his mouth and let out a fierce roar. Ha! His expression suddenly became terrifying, his face seemed to twist, and a strange feeling flickered beneath his skin. The roar swept over the 2 red metal balls, and they exploded. Bang! Bang! The metal balls exploded, but not as violently as expected. Instead, a large amount of red smoke appeared and began to spread around Lu Huang. Tanaka Ryusei held his twin swords and slowly disappeared into the smoke. Invisibility technique. He held his breath, made his breathing lighter, and then sneaked around Lu Huang, trying to kill Liu first. However, such a trick could not escape Lu Huang's eyes. He and Liu were old teammates and well-known lovers. He knew better than anyone that Liu would be the enemy's priority in battle. Tanaka Ryusei sneaked past Lu Huang and quickly approached Liu. I got her. Was it that easy? Even Tanaka Ryusei didn't expect things to be so simple. He hesitated for a moment, but since he had found an opportunity to slash his opponent's assistant, there was no need to hold back. Tanaka Ryusei quickly drew his sword and slashed at Liu's head. Shwa! The sword blade flashed by, and Liu's pupils contracted as the blade magnified infinitely in her eyes. Ping! Just as the blade was about to reach her head, a long sword suddenly appeared in front of Liu and blocked Tanaka Ryusei's slash. Tanaka Ryusei froze for a moment. He had thought of countless possible outcomes, including the possibility of Lu Huang blocking the attack. But even if that happened, he could still use Liu to distract Lu Huang and keep him from moving freely. However, he did not expect it to turn out like this. Because that sword did not come from Lu Huang, but from his assistant right in front of him, Liu. Liu held the long sword in her hand, and a strange white light flashed in her eyes. You want to kill me? Is it that easy? When she spoke, 2 voices came from her mouth, one was hers, and the other was Lu Huang's. 2. Captains? Liu drew her sword and slashed, and Tanaka Ryusei reacted quickly, blocking several blows in a hurry, then retreating at top speed. Lu Huang and Liu stood more than 10 meters apart, both holding weapons in their hands, even their stances were almost identical. After careful observation, Tanaka Ryusei finally got a vague idea of their abilities. The woman named Liu was not at the captain level. When she showed her powerful combat ability, Lu Huang's body had clearly weakened a little. Can she and Gluttony borrow and transfer power between each other? Liu's ability, love and sincerity, was the ability of lovers. Lovers love and adore each other, are intimate, and can share everything with each other. This includes strength and supernatural abilities. This is why Liu, as a support, could appear on the battlefield openly. Because at any time, she could borrow strength from Lu Huang. Even when Lu Huang lost his fighting ability, she could temporarily replace his role. Tanaka Ryusei muttered, "What an interesting ability. I don't know how you found such an amazing woman. But now, it's time for me to show you what I've got." A thick white mist appeared around his body, and he thrust his twin swords into the ground. Moments later, with a deafening roar, a massive, hideous white monster appeared on the battlefield with a thunderous crash. A snake demon covered in white barbs and possessing 8 heads, it roared menacingly, gazing down upon all directions.